All right, thanks, Matt. Here we go. Joined by Dominic Harvey again for the first half today and tomorrow. Todd Anderson and David Delgado. Like you, Matt was just explaining, David with the opportunity to potentially move up into a Season 3 points invite. Todd Anderson, it's win or not in the championship as he is a newbie to the series. Playing Gruul Breach.
Yeah, so a very familiar face on a somewhat unfamiliar deck. I know that Jesse Robkin, one of the pioneers of the Jeskai Breach deck, or that Izzet core with the Breach deck, has said that basic shell of I'm going to play Ragavan, I'm going to play Underworld Breach with Grinding Station. That core is strong enough that there are lots of different ways you can build it, and all of them are going to be decently successful. Todd really taking that principle and running with it here. So forsaking the blue cards altogether, this is a much leaner, kind of red-heavy version of this deck, with this green splash for Wrenn and Six primarily, but also the one Haywire Mite that we flagged up before, and then some green sideboard cards like Ancient Grudge and Veil of Summer too.
All right, well, we'll see how this plays out against another one of the accepted Tier 1 decks of the format. Izzet Murktide in the hands of David Delgado, looking to jump a couple people for the Season 3 points invite.
Yeah, Todd is almost free-rolling this tournament. I'm going to come along to this large tournament with my friends and have some fun. And, hey, if I win, I get to play another big tournament. Delgado is really in the thick of things. He's in that scrum for the points race, so he has a lot additional on the line here. And playing, a stock version of one of the mainstream decks. But whenever I hear that someone is an expert with Doomsday, that always seems faintly intimidating to me. So I'm going to have respect for their abilities no matter what they're playing.
Yeah, Doomsday deck. Now, there are some combos that are just, you reanimate your big creature, you sneak attack, whatever. It's over with. Then there's Breach decks and there's Doomsday decks where like you set the combo and you still have a lot more work to do.
Yes, some of these combos almost write themselves, or they tell you how to go through the steps. With Doomsday, you're left to figure it out, and if you get it wrong, you died, and you did that to yourself.
Yeah.
So a lot of ways to humble yourself, potentially on camera, even with Doomsday. So anyone who can survive that gauntlet has some credibility in my book. And we are off to a pretty fast start here. Wrenn and Six being tagged by Ragavan, tagged by Wrenn and Six, in turn tagged by Unholy Heat, and now the board is mostly clear, but it looks like Delgado missing that second land drop, potentially.
Yeah, Delgado missing a land drop. Todd Anderson with actually almost a worthless hand at this point. A Grinding Station extra and a pair of Mox in hand. Now, he does have a Breach, so there's potential for Grinding Station to just lead to a win. But if it doesn't, he just has nothing. But Urza Saga does a good job of bailing you out when that's the scenario. And with the Mox in play here, making a couple constructs versus David's empty board, but at least he drew a land is, we still got a real game developing here.
And now Todd has this choice of, do you just jam and go for the win against an opponent who's showing weakness, or do you think, well, 2 open mana representing counterspell, I have other ways to use my own mana with the Urza Saga, I can afford to wait and kind of pick a spot, and if David is having to take the shields down to deal with these Saga tokens, well, then that's the perfect window to jam the Breach and get the job done.
All right, so construct number 1 into play. Construct number 2 on the way. And yeah, David with counterspells and a dress down in hand. Dress down's going to come out right now. Now, is this
main deck dress down doing a fantastic job at cleaning up those Saga tokens, while also potentially helping David to repair this awkward draw that he has.
A little. So obviously there is some sacrifice here for David taking down counterspell mana. Conceivably could have just taken one hit from a construct, which arguably would have been a fairly large hit, and then used dress down at the end of the turn. So certainly prioritizing his life total here, which is a choice.
Maybe suggesting he also has the spell pierce or one of the main deck spell snare actually would also work as a way to deal with an Underworld Breach.
Sure. Yeah. Alternatively, maybe trying to bait Todd Anderson into something else that his hand was capable of dealing with, despite only having 1 mana available.
And this is the nice thing about your combo pieces being artifacts is ideally this grinding station, this Mox Amber would be helping you to win the game directly. But if they're not, then they're +1/+1 for your construct tokens, and that's that's the job they were doing for now.
So David baubles himself here, perhaps looking for a land, and if the land was there, maybe Expressive Iteration would have been cast, but since presumably it's not, going to hold up Counterspell mana and not fire it off for this turn. And Petty Theft was in fact the card there. Todd, unfortunately for his side, for fans of him, drawing redundant combo pieces and Urza Saga targets, but I mean, Breach has a way of finding value even when it's not winning the game.
Yeah, that Haywire Mite not doing much for Todd in this game. But yeah, drawing redundant Underworld Breaches against a deck with a lot of interaction might be the best place to be, where you can just put David to the test time after time, and if he ever doesn't have the right solution, you can just win the game on the spot.
Right. And David's going to let Breach resolve.
Okay, we are off to the races here.
So there's the first Bauble. So you haven't seen this before. Breach and Bauble can just cycle Baubles for each 3 cards in the graveyard. However, with Grinding Station in play, there's potential for, more goodness. I guess we can actually just go with Station and Bauble. We can just go pretty far, can't we? Can we go the whole way with that?
Yeah, I mean, if you have Underworld Breach and Grinding Station, Station mills you 3 cards, and you need 3 cards to escape something with Underworld Breach, so that creates this perfect loop, where if you have an artifact that costs 0 mana, like a Bauble, like a Mox Amber, you just cycle that over and over again, mill through your entire deck, you get to the point where you mill over your Grape Shot, you can cast that, or the Thassa's Oracle in the blue list, and win the game from there.
So then, knowing that, could we say that David Delgado may have tripped up here by not counterspelling this Breach, or is there a decent chance that Todd Anderson fizzles out from here somehow?
If you can counterspell the Breach, you have to counterspell the Breach. There are temporary answers, stuff like Petty Theft and so on, but even that delays the inevitable by just a turn. And also, Todd can still immediately recast something after getting priority back with the Breach. So, so we're seeing Petty Theft bouncing the Grinding Station. So that is a pretty heads-up move here, in the sense that if Todd doesn't have a way to keep going, you stop the combo, and you also burn through the Underworld Breach. But as we mentioned, going to get some value from that regardless.
Right. And also David having no way of knowing that Todd has extra Breach in hand, and giving up a couple cards for the first Breach wouldn't be so bad on the face of it, as Todd's board is still, I mean, not anything David probably can't handle if he finds some land drops. Not a lot of interaction though. A lot of card advantage for David Delgado. Both players draws not elite at this point.
Although from David's side, looking over at Todd with, you have the Ragavan in play, and then 6 cards in hand at this point, you can't be feeling great about your position, I think.
No, I would not think so. All right, Saga drawn for Todd. That's generally good. Here is a Fury to clean out this Ledger Shredder. And if you're David, can you counterspell this? It's pretty risky.
And this is a test, right? Now, every single card that Todd presents, if you counter the wrong thing and he has another copy of Underworld Breach, that's it. The game is over on the spot.
Okay, so Ragavan Haywire might connect. Flip over a Bolt. That's good sometimes. Here, it's castable, but not super exciting.
Yeah, and this is kind of the same test. Even if David had an Unholy Heat or something like that, can you afford to go down to 1 mana to stave off that Ragavan hit? Probably not, right? You have to take your licks and maybe try and do that at another time.
All right, Bolt does get fired off. Grinding Station on the way back down, and this is unfortunate for David Delgado. Not necessarily a misplay, but Todd has plenty of Grinding Stations in reserve here.
And countering the Grinding Station is risky insofar as, if Todd has enough mana, the Underworld Breach can just return the Grinding Station as part of the combo anyway. Past a certain point, the Breach is this self-contained 1-card combo in its own right.
Right. Okay, some confusion there on the Expressive Iteration resolution, but Flooded Strand does make it into play. And
Yeah,
Todd
Todd may be missing some chances to pad his graveyard further with these grinding station activations. So sacrificing a construct that's about to die, for example, to mill over 3 cards. Or one of the weird quirks of grinding station is that it triggers off itself. So when you cast it, if you're on Magic Online, for example, you immediately get a trigger for it to untap, and then you can sometimes respond to that by sacrificing something and then having it untap, and that lets you kind of almost cheat this extra activation out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about those kind of things. Same as Kappa Cannoneer. It comes into play and triggers itself, and it's like, could this have been written a little smoother? But it works. It's functional, but yeah, kind of an odd interaction there. I agree with you.
Because Haywire Mite is just helping to beat down in this game.
Yeah, it's got through for like 3 points already. It's doing work.
So 1/1 that's going to pump our constructs. And hey, once again, if Haywire Mite is on the way out, just sacrifice it to Grinding Station and mill some more cards over.
Okay, Shredder for David. Iteration gets a connive. However, the Urza Saga is looming. And this is, exactly what Ross and then you were talking about earlier, is the attacking from multiple angles. You're putting pressure on the board, and at some point, David may not be able to leave up counterspell mana. And then if Todd's at the ready with Breach, which we know he is, that could spell the end of the game.
It has to be so scary trying to play this game from David's side, where there are all these threats you have to fend off and try and stabilize, and at the same time, you take the shields down for one moment at the wrong time, and the game just might be over.
Mm-hmm. All right, David, giving some thought to this Expressive Iteration resolution here. Well, that Murktide is looking pretty juicy for Todd Anderson, because if it resolves, that means David's spending all his mana for the turn.
Yeah, and we've already burned through that one main deck copy of Dress-Down, and so if David wants to deal with these contract tokens, you have to do all of that manually, spending at least 2 removal spells potentially to clean all of that up.
Right. And a good way to deal with them is to just have an outsized blocker. So David may go for that here, and then just hope there's not another Breach in hand, which, Todd didn't do a whole lot with his last turn, so maybe David assumes it's not there, and Todd's like, Todd flashes it. He's like,
yeah,
if you want to concede right now, here's a reason you might be interested in doing that.
Yeah, we can go through the motions if you like, or we can save some time and move this along. So yeah, Todd Anderson going to lock out this first game, and this is one disadvantage or trade-off with this Gruul version of the Breach deck versus the Izzet or the Jeskai and so on, is that without iteration, without your own ledger shredders and so on, there's less card selection, and so yeah, it's a little less likely that Todd does have that second copy of Underworld Breach. I mean, let alone the first one. But Todd had what he needed here, going to take down this first game, and we'll see how the players want to handle this in sideboarding now.
Yeah. So if you're new to this and curious what just happened there, Todd Anderson saying, I'm going to combo out, and David either offered by Todd or David suggests, okay, you can save yourself the trouble, but your deck is going to be revealed while you combo out. So can I just see your deck, and then I'll save you the trouble of going through all the steps? Todd agrees, hands over his deck. David looks through it, and then we're on to sideboarding. So let's go ahead and bring up the lists and see what the players are working with. David now working with slightly more information than Todd is, having seen the main deck. But again, when you're playing a tier 1 deck in Modern, experienced players probably know what's in here anyway without even having to see it. So let's
kind of
let me ask
50 something of those main deck cards.
Right. So let me ask you this: what tier is Todd Anderson unlikely to know for sure is in there? The counter mix, probably.
Yeah, that one spell snare may catch him a little bit off guard, and then there's always this question of, do they have that one main deck Petty Theft, Brazen Borrower? We see some lists with main deck Blood Moons, a little less so now, but that's still a fairly common choice. And then sometimes it's Archmage's Charm, sometimes it's a few other things. Those final flex slots are where the real variation comes in. And then Todd's deck is kind of off the wall. I mean, if you're a fan of Todd's stream, you can see him. He was streaming this deck over the course of the week, so maybe David was there in the chat there. But for the most part, this Gruul version of Breach is kind of off the radar. So yeah, even if I mean, it is worth, especially in this tournament, which is closed deck list, you're going to take the chance to go through and see what those cards that would have been milled are. But especially when Todd is, you're bringing something pretty new to the table here.
So let's go ahead and look at Todd Anderson's deck list. This Gruul Breach list. Dragon Rage Channeler. Something that's present that's not always in the Jeskai list, as we don't have Ledger Shredder here. We have Fables, we have Furies, and we saw that come into play and kind of clean up the board a little bit, add card disadvantage, but at some point you don't care. And then, so Ross mentioned in the interview about the Grave Shot versus Thassa's Oracle. Some players are playing one way or the other. And he mentioned that one drawback of, now obviously the Gruul Breach deck doesn't have that option, but we do see the alternative here, Grave Shot, not vulnerable to dress down, spiking the win condition, and also able to potentially win without, you don't need to deck yourself completely. Grave Shot can be cast twice off of a Breach, I suppose, without having to go so deep maybe.
Yeah, the Grave Shot also, I think, is often better just as a magic card if you're casting it. So sometimes can clean up their Ragavan, let yours get a hit in. You have a lot of cheap spells, so sometimes you can build towards this big Grave Shot turn. And then one trade-off in the Izzet Breach decks is often they can play Gigantha in their sideboard. If you give up the Thassa's Oracle, that is actually the only card that's incompatible with Gigantha, and so switching around the kill condition gives you a companion as well, which in theory would be on the table for this deck, but Todd has decided that Fury is actually worth ignoring the big moose. And I think Fury, from what Todd has said, this is one of the main draws to this build of the deck. It felt like every time he would start a new league, more and more copies of Fury would find their way in because it was just consistently overperforming. And it makes sense, right? Because this is a deck where you will often have a redundant red card. So the second copy of Ragavan or Wrenn and Six or something, an Underworld Breach that is offline for whatever reason. And it's a fantastic removal spell. And then in this deck, between Mox Amber, Springleaf Drum, treasures from Ragavan and Fable, you can just cast that thing, and it's really beefy. That's your backup win condition. And if you ever get to copy it with Fable, well, that's a great time too.
Yeah, that is good stuff. It also gives him more play in the early games against decks like Hammer that are trying to get out ahead of you. All right, so game 2 getting ready here. David Delgado looking for a more stable start than last time. Not missing the second land drop would be an improvement.
Yeah, this Murktide deck is built to operate on few resources, but getting stuck on one land is as much a danger for it as it is for any other deck in Magic for the most part.
But that opening, the previous game's hand, there was a Bauble, there was a Ragavan. Like, you have some potential there, even though you're keeping one land, and it just didn't work out, which obviously can happen sometimes.
Yeah, turn 1 Dragon's Rage Channeler for Todd, and this is a card which was in the first versions of the Jeskai Breach deck, and kind of worked its way out as these other options like Ledger Shredder found their way into the mix. In this Gruul version, there are fewer alternatives, so you're more likely to play it, but also you're more likely to want to play it. I think it is better in this setup that Todd has going on here.
All right. Second land, I guess, achievement unlocked for David Delgado. And Todd Anderson looking to build here. Ragavan is a good place to be, and he's got one. Maybe deciding whether to dash or not.
This Ragavan may be paying for itself this turn, just turning on that Mox Amber, effectively becoming free if Todd has a decent follow-up here, which we're cracking this Arid Mesa, so maybe he does.
All right, let's see. I didn't spy anything in hand that looked like a follow-up, but we'll see. No, it looks like it's just a pass. And that's something.
It's that classic Bauble trick, right? Of kind of build your own opt with a Mishra's Bauble and a fetch land.
Right. Yeah. All right. So Dave will get things rolling here. An answer required for the Ragavan on the board. Oop. And yeah, all right. So while cutting David's deck, Todd knocked the card over. So they will get a judge over and get permission to just re-randomize the deck. And while they take a moment to fix that up, we'll just remind you that you're watching the Energy Series, the Rage Gaming, a tournament series that covers the Midwest of the United States, centered out of Chicago. Thanks for being here. Hit the follow if you're enjoying the content. We'll be here all weekend. Dominic Harvey, the first half of the Modern Tournament today and the first half of the Pioneer Tournament tomorrow. So if you're interested in Pioneer and you just tuned in and you're like, oh, crap, it's Modern, just come back tomorrow. We'll still be here.
Yeah, we got a nice range of formats on offer, and over 500 of you, I think, at the current count, joining us here on this Saturday morning. So very thankful to all of you for giving us your time. A lot of good Magic coverage on offer this weekend. It's a nice problem to have, but we thank you for giving us your attention.
Okay, well, they are still... So, okay, because the card flipped over, just speculating here, this is actually maybe going to be looking at extra cards, not just like a dexterity we need to randomize. There actually has maybe be a penalty. I don't know. It won't be a significant penalty, but there may be something that needs to be just noted down by the judges before things continue on. So while we have a moment here, so we looked at the players' deck lists, during sideboarding, but it is a closed deck list tournament, whereas recently we had the regional championships, which were open deck lists. Dominic, do you have an opinion what you prefer out of those options?
I think both sides have pros and cons. I did enjoy with open deck lists that people could tweet out this deck that they were excited to be playing, or in that scramble that happens at every tournament for I need these cards at the last minute. You didn't feel like you were leaking any information with that. So I kind of enjoyed that people could just be open about their choices and talk about the tournament in this more open way. At the same time, it is fun to see on camera when someone shows up with something completely off the wall,
right,
and you can tell their opponent is caught off guard. And I like to reward people for making those choices too. So I think it goes back and forth, but the convenience of open deck lists, I think, is a big selling point.
No, and yeah, I feel similarly in that I could probably be convinced either way. Playing in the regional championship was kind of a departure from what I was used to, but then the next week playing a regular tournament, I was like, why do we have open deck lists? This is right? I get used to this after 1 week anyway. So yeah, it's definitely the case is not settled for me one way or the other. As we're back to the game now, we got that sorted out with the card being knocked over, a consider end of turn, and then we had the two Ragavans trade off, suggesting that no one has removal.
Yeah, it's like a nature documentary, seeing these rival gangs of monkeys, doing battle in the forest here. But Todd is going for Underworld Breach here. Wow.
Mm-hmm. And David's like, yeah, that didn't work out too well last game. Let me go ahead and spell pierce this one, get this out of here.
And that's not I'm going off and killing you this turn Underworld Breach. It's
right.
I'll buy back my Ragavan and buy back my Mishra's Bauble Underworld Breach.
Yeah, and still a 2-for-1, and David's not interested, leaving Todd with a Fury in hand and obviously not anything else on the board.
Yeah, and that Fury potentially castable if the game drags on a little bit. And these, the entire cycle, honestly, of Evoke Elementals from Modern Horizons 2, so powerful as both these early plays and these late game plays. I think they are interesting additions to the format, but you can certainly tell the effect that they've had.
Right. No, in general, I think, and actually this relates to a comment just now in the chat about open deck lists helping the player on the draw. And the same thing, I think these pitchcast elementals really help the player that's going second interact and keep up. And I think that is something that's relevant as going first in Magic is, I'll be honest, when I saw statistics on it, it wasn't as significant an advantage as I thought it would have been, but it still does matter.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who is known for tapping and untapping Lotus Field and trying to assemble 3 specific Tron lands, I think there are certain classes of deck where if your opponent knows, this Fatal Push, if I'm mulliganing to 6, I need to put this back, or they need to know what kind of hands to mulligan or to look for. I think that does really benefit some decks at the expense of others. So there are trade-offs involved for sure. And, I am open to arguments either way here. But as we mentioned, that Hardcast Fury now, if this resolves, going to eat that Ledger Shredder and then maybe just eat David over the course of the next few
I
months.
mean, Fury hits pretty hard. So, well, okay, not this one though. It's out of here. Dispatched by, I think that's an Abrade. And David with not much to do, but draws an Expressive Iteration. That's a good thing to draw when you're empty-handed, or with no action at least.
And that Engineered Explosives on 0, just sitting there waiting for Todd to activate that Urza Saga and threatening to clean everything up after that happens.
All right, we have definitely reached the middle later stage of this game, as we have both players have deployed all the land they need to cast whatever they want, and it's just a matter of how we can outmaneuver each other, or in this case, just how we can draw the right tools. Todd with a Breach in hand, deciding to hold it for another day with one gone already. I suppose maybe the value Breach plan probably gets more frightening the later you go in the game, or the more breaches that are gone, because you do need one left at the end of combo with, so you can't just use them as a divination too many times.
Yeah, so Explosives will clean up both Construct tokens and the Mox Amber that was just hanging out there as well. But you see Todd has, I think that's 4 separate rows splayed out for his graveyard at this point. So that Underworld Breach can recur several cards, even if we're not going for that full combo once again.
Yes, indeed. And responding here to the Urza Saga, because we are in closed deck list, David has no way of knowing if a Pithing Needle was going to come out from that Urza Saga and lock down the explosives. So doing it preemptively there, as there really is no choice in that scenario.
That does open up this interesting back and forth of, if Todd just doesn't make a token and passes priority, then David has a choice of either you activate the explosives and then Todd still has a window to make the construct afterwards,
right?
Or you let the Saga trigger resolve, and then if Todd does have Pithing Needle can shut off explosives. In practice, I think this is not really a matchup where Needle is going to come in. Explosives is really the only card you might care about that it does hit. But an interesting thing that can come up sometimes.
Yeah. All right. Replacement Mox for Todd, and then Ragavan to turn it on.
And this is just a mystical archive lightning bolt, I want to say.
Sounds good to me. Perhaps something that rained fire down upon the Dragon Rage Channeler, and it is out of here. Ooh, not much going on here for David. And Ragavan is going to connect, and that's always a happy feeling if you're Todd Anderson, or if you're, well, I take it back.
Yeah, it looks like this is Dress Down just to prevent that damage trigger from going ahead. And maybe if we do draw into a removal spell off that, then we can deal with it more permanently. But David has a fairly reactive hand at this point and is also flooding out. So really not much going on. And Todd has all the time in the world to get this second wave together.
Yeah, and using a Dress Down on the Ragavan there, I mean, that is a real cost. I mean, I understand David needing to dig deeper in the deck looking for action, but that is not free.
Yeah, if there was a follow-up Urza Saga, then
yeah,
you really wish you had that back. But
right. Okay, now Ragavan will connect. No big hit this time, I guess. Well, with a creature in play, Todd could cast that counter spell to protect a breach conceivably, but there is no untapped creature to generate a second blue mana.
I wonder if Todd is thinking about just deploying the Fury as a 3/3 double strike.
No,
he has that additional Unholy Heat for any kind of non-Murktide threat anyway, so maybe this is the time to press your advantage.
I agree. That's definitely what is under consideration here, and yeah, he's gonna pull the trigger on it. So there it is, not wanting to wait. Okay, so he's using the Fury. Oh, this is interesting. He's using the Fury just to pitch cast and then generate mana with the Springleaf Drum. Okay.
Oh, Okay, this is okay. So we're
Yeah.
going for Underworld Breach with Counterspell backup in our Gruul deck via Evoke Fury becoming Lotus Petal off of Springleaf Drum.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Maybe we can get, yeah, that is a blue mana that's floating. Very well done by Todd Anderson there. So now this counterspell with a blue mana floating and the treasure in play is actually castable. And now he can go to town with this breach.
A lot more game actions will be taken this turn, I suspect. And you saw David had that spell piece in hand, just almost mocking him at this point. Just that card really has outlived its usefulness by now.
All right, Dragon Rage Channeler into play. That will allow surveilling on basically everything else that gets cast for the turn. And
yeah, so with the Channeler in play, these loops of Breach and Grinding Station, you're actually netting a card in the process, and so the Channeler also really helps the Fair Breach plan, where if you're just recasting some Baubles and some Lightning Bolts and so on, you're adding a new card to your graveyard each time, makes it much easier to cast more of those. And then once you get the second Channeler or the third Channeler, that really adds up to the point where you have, if you just have 3 Channelers and an Underworld Breach, you don't even need the Grinding Station. You're just tearing through your deck manually regardless.
Sure. So this other die on the board, I believe this is Storm Count. Let me find out for sure if that is true. Okay, that is. Yeah. Okay. As that is relevant. We don't see Storm Count be relevant too often these days, but it does matter for this Grave Shot kill.
Yeah, the actual Storm combo decks have not been seen in Modern in quite some time, but a Storm card can still sneak through here and there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was playing a league this week with Tron online. I played against Storm, and I was like, "What is this? How did this player escape from 2 years ago or 5 years ago into my league? This isn't
Joe,
right."
I think they're saying the same thing about your Tron deck. I gotta be honest, but
yeah, that's fair.
Some real 2017 open vibes from that matchup. For sure.
I suppose. All right, so now we have blue and red mana floating. We've got Storm building. We've got David hoping this fizzles out somehow. There is no grinding station yet. Well, okay, there's one. They just got surveilled into the graveyard and effectively surveilled into Todd's hand with Underworld Breach already being in play. And here it comes.
Yeah, so this is the beginning of the end, I think, here for David Delgado, who will be 1-1, so still very much in contention, but no loss to give anymore. Back up against the wall, got to rattle off a few in a row to stay in that scrum for that at-large spot here.
All right, so some questions from the chat as to why isn't David playing his counterspell? So the counterspell that's, and then also why is there a counterspell in the middle of the table? So if you're just joining us, that counterspell in the middle of the table was hit by Ragavan this turn, and Todd Anderson used a Springleaf Drum to make blue about 10 game actions ago, and then now has a treasure to make the second blue to be able to counterspell back, and that's why he did it, and it pays off 5 minutes later, and Todd Anderson will defeat David Delgado 2-0 in what was, I would say, a pretty well-played game.
Yeah, but we're going to try and get Todd's insight on that match as well. We can also report that Jesse Robkin, a strong contender in the Player of the Year race, also playing Breach, also in our feature match area, also won. So the 3 copies of Breach of various guises in the feature match area so far have all won. So that deck's certainly living up to the hype so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving, and the two Star City boys, both picking up wins early on, showing their stuff. I know Todd Anderson from his Twitter feed sounded more excited about Pioneer tomorrow, but certainly his deck an outlier from the top tiers of the format delivered and looked good doing it.
Yeah, Todd has kind of rebranded as the Pioneer guy and was streaming a lot of that format even before a lot of eyeballs were on it with the regional championships and so on. But, a accomplished Magic player will dip his toe in whatever the format is for the next tournament, and seems to have found something that he really clicks with in Modern here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that's while he's making his way over here. So okay, how many formats are you comfortable with preparing for at one time? Like how many formats do you want to actively be tracking and playing? Is it 2? Is it 1? Are you think standard, modern, pioneer, legacy, you're good with all of it at once? What do you think?
It's really difficult. I know
Yeah.
for tournaments like the Star City Players Championship and then for the NRG Championship as well, that burden of juggling 3 formats at once, that's really difficult. And usually something has to give. Usually you kind of pencil in a default choice for one of them and then really devote your energy to the others. But it's difficult, especially if you have other commitments on your time as well. And I think knowing how to balance that, we all remember the stretches where, okay, this tournament is standard, then next week it's modern, this next week it's pioneer. Staying on top of all of that at once, very difficult. And the players who figure out a way to manage that time effectively, I think, are the ones who really get rewarded there.
Yeah. And that used to be something like you were saying, just for, kind of these elite invitational tournaments where you had everything at once. But now with the RCQ season alternating formats, a lot of, local players are having to deal with, on a week in, week out basis, playing different formats, and that can get taxing. Which is where, even though I don't agree with it, the argument comes from of having the RCQ formats be single format for each season. Anyway, we can table that for now. Todd Anderson is in the booth. Good morning, Todd. You there? There he is.
Yo, sorry, I was grabbing a drink of water. I didn't get it done in time. Hi, Joe. Hi, Dom. How are y'all?
We're doing good, man. All right. Yeah. So we saw Jeskai Breach this morning already.
Yep.
And so what was the decision process to play the Gruul Breach deck?
So about a month or two ago, there was a RCQ in Roanoke, and I haven't really played that much Modern in the last year. It's mostly just been Pioneer for the stream, and honestly, I didn't really know what to play. I've been watching a ton of Aspiring Spike stream, and he had this really cool Gruul Breach deck that, played very similarly to the decks that like Ross Miriam and Jesse have been playing, and but it had an alternate mode of attack and also a different engine. I loved the Wrenn and Six with Urza Saga, allowed you to like win longer games. Dragon Race Channeler gave you that ability to like get under opponents with Ragavan and DRC to just overwhelm the removal spells. I wasn't a big fan of Ledger Shredder, and this may sound weird. I actually thought Expressive Iteration was pretty bad in the deck. It's obviously a great card. It's just insanely mana intensive, and for a deck that wants to play almost all 1-drops and Urza Saga, having something that costs 2 kind of gums up the works on occasion. And so what ended up happening is I just saw Spike play. He went 10-0 in 2 leagues, and I was like, okay, I want to play this deck. And so I've been kind of on this deck for, a month or two off and on, preparing for this event. I tried out a Teamer build. I tried out the Jeskai build. I tried out a blue-red. Like, I tried a bunch of different color combinations, a bunch of different combination of spells, and I couldn't really find something that I really liked. But I did know one thing from testing, and that's that Fury needed to be in the main deck. And if I want to play Fury in the main deck, I thought the best way to do it would be to be able to hard cast it. And Wrenn and Six helps with that. Mox Amber with Wrenn and Six, it's harder to kill, so Mox Amber is more reliable. That helps cast it. And Fury can not only be your interactive piece that you need in the early games against opposing Ragavans and Creature Swarm decks, but it can also be that Ledger Shredder type threat in the late game that you can hard cast because we have the ability to hit all our mana.
All right. Now, we saw in that game too, we saw a pretty crafty play by Evoke Fury, I think, just to have a creature to tap to Springleaf Drum.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
so,
is that go ahead? Is that something that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I revealed Counterspell for Ragavan, right? And I'm just like, I have an Underworld Breach in hand. Even if I can't kill him this turn, I can still Mishra's Bauble like 6 times because there's a Dragon Race channel in the graveyard. And the only way I could get the second blue was to pitch the Fury to be able to do the Springleaf Drum. And while it's like -2 cards to do it, what it could do is win me the game and through like a lot of different stuff. And so I thought like also this is gonna get me more camera time if I do this play because this is a really cool play.
Yeah.
And so it all worked out, and it was a great play and ended up winning me the game. So
it did. I mean, yeah, David was sitting on Spell Pierce and Counterspell, probably felt pretty safe. And then you would evoke Fury on an empty board and everything falls apart.
Yeah, imagine your hands Counterspell and Spell Pierce against my deck, and then your opponent reveals Counterspell at the top, and they pitch a Fury with no creatures in play. You cannot imagine you're getting out of that turn alive.
No.
Your Gruul deck somehow won the counter war against the blue deck. I'm not sure how that's meant to happen, but it really seems like you look at this deck from first principles, it's just all of the broken MH2 cards, and then the most broken MH1 card, which maybe is just the best card in the format, some would say. And then Underworld Breach, which is, to use family-friendly language, a messed up card in its own right. And you tie all of that together, and you have the ingredients for a pretty good deck there.
Yeah, my deck, all the cards were printed in the last 5 years, except for the fetch lands. So.
Yeah, no, it looked impressive there. So now you're here, obviously playing. We have a big event today for the invite to the championship and a good prize money. But it sounded like you're excited about playing tomorrow as well. And if people now, you've done a lot of writing about your deck for tomorrow. So why don't you hit people with your Patreon in case they want to look it up and read about what you're going to be playing tomorrow?
Sure. So I do stream. It's twitch.tv/TandyMTG. I have a Patreon where I write about all my content. It's patreon.com/Tandy, TANDY. Tomorrow for Pioneer, I have maybe my favorite deck I've made in the last 5 years. The moment I saw Third Path Iconoclast, I thought we just get to play 8 Young Pyromancers. That pivot point on turn 2 is just going to be what I want to build around with all of this cheap one-mana interaction, all these treasure cruises. And even before Third Path Iconoclast, the card of One Mind was actually seeing play alongside Young Pyromancer. And now we just get to see it with 2 different versions of it. And it's just this churning deck that I just love. And until last week, I wasn't sold on the archetype. I kind of put it on the back burner, but we do this thing called the Apex Gauntlet for a store in Caldwell, Ohio, Apex Gaming, and Ross Merriam and I went up there to do commentary on one of their RCQs. And the Saturday, though, we just did like old versus live, basically, where we just pitted my APZ deck against mono green, Rakdos midrange, and mono white. And I won 11 or 12 games out of the 15 we played. The deck was churning awesomely, and it felt great. And even Ross is playing it tomorrow. And when you convince Ross to play a new deck, you have to know it's good. He only chooses the choice bits.
All right.
It's got Steam Fence in it. It kind of been a hard sell.
That's true. It's not that hard to convince him, I guess.
All right. Well, Todd Anderson looking to enjoy himself both days this weekend. Good luck good job so far, and maybe we'll see you back this afternoon or tomorrow.
All right. See y'all.
Okay. So 2 rounds in the books. Star City guys looking good on camera. Next few rounds, I'm sure we'll be featuring the points race. David Delgado is in the points race. So we got the best of both worlds as far as the round 2 feature match. But stick around the rest of the day, and we're going to put somebody else into the championship. And then through today and tomorrow, we're going to fill up. We got a bunch of spots. We got 6 leaderboard slots to fill. Who is going to punch our ticket to the Nerd Rage Championship? Find out the rest of this weekend. This is Nerd Rage Gaming. We'll be right back.